Hey everybody, well, welcome to Lynn, Texas on this fine Saturday morning where I don't know how far we are into this COVID thing, but anyhow, things in Texas have really changed. Especially in East Texas, I mean, you can't hardly tell, or you can hardly even tell that things have been shut down, except still people wearing some masks and thing, and they're still doing some social distancing at restaurants and stuff. But you get out on the roads and people are going everywhere. So wherever you are as you're watching this, I hope that y'all are having a good day, and I hope you're looking forward to this next session, because we've started a series on the last video, and it might have been just a little bit boring because it's just kind of a lot of background information, but we're going to start getting into the real meat of this thing on this session as we talk about the science of barrel racing. But in this session, we're going to talk more specifically about speed, maybe some of the science of speed, what is speed. And so as we get into this, I've made a couple of posters or charts or whatever you want to call them. And so you'll see on this first one, I asked the question, what is speed? Now, if you're like me and came up through the 60s and 70s, your answer to what is speed might be, well, hey man, it's a drug. But no, we're not talking about that kind of speed. We're talking about how long it takes something to get from one place to another. So as we look at speed, we see the formula. When we look at the formula for speed, it's velocity or speed equals the distance divided by time. Okay, distance divided by time. Now, every one of us is familiar with the term miles per hour, because when we're talking about cars and we say, well, how fast are you going, or what is your speed? Well, it's how fast, how long of a time is it taking you to cover a certain distance. Now, there's two terms that sometimes get used interchangeably for speed. Of course, we have the term speed, but then we also talk about velocity. Okay, are velocity and speed exactly the same? Well, yes and no. Okay, because velocity, if you kind of look at the definitions, velocity is actually the across the ground, so to speak, time it takes for an object to get from one point to another. That is velocity. It's not dependent on direction, it's not dependent on anything, but just how fast is that object moving. However, when we look at speed, speed is really, yes, velocity is a part of it, but what happens if, as you're going, let's say you're going from here down the block and back, okay? So as you leave here and you're going a certain mile per hour to get down to the end of the block, then you went a certain velocity and the speed was equal to that. However, when you got to the end of the block, if you turned around and came back to the starting point, then if you look at the speed, well, because we didn't cover any distance, our speed overall was zero. And so there's a whole lot of factors, and you could get so technical into this stuff and it would get very boring. So we're not going to go all there. So we're just going to look at how does speed relate to our barrel racing. Okay, now I have another chart that I'm going to put up in a minute to show you kind of some of the ways that we figured this. But if we look, stride length, as a horse is running, his length of stride has a great effect on how fast he's going, or what his speed is, okay? And I think we'd all agree with that. And I did just a real quick example here. If a horse's stride length is 10 feet, which is probably a little low, but it's just for example, if a horse's stride is 10 feet and we measure 100-foot distance, and we divide the 100 by the length of the stride, we come out that it would take him 10 strides to go 100 feet. Okay, 10 strides. It's going to be important in a minute. However, if the horse was running 11 feet per second, okay, I'm sorry, 11 feet per stride, and we measured how many strides it would take him to go 100 feet, we would find out that that would be 9 strides. So here we have horse number 1 with a 10-foot stride running 100 feet in 10 strides. Horse number 2 with an 11-foot stride runs 100 feet. He gets there in 9 strides. Which one's going to get there faster or sooner, let's say? Okay? So that's just kind of a simple example. And now I'm going to pause for just a minute, and I'm going to put another chart up, and we're going to talk about how did I determine just how long a stride takes. So be back in just a minute. Okay, now I've got this new chart up here, and this, if you'll look at this, this is a representation of what we used to call the Tanner time pattern. Okay, you know, we spent about 5 years working with Shane and Lynette Pritchard with the Tanner times, and it was a computerized timing system using laser timers, and this is kind of the pattern that we set up. Okay, you'll see this is a barrel 1, barrel 2, barrel 3. Okay, this green line right here, that's our main timer, the one that times the total barrel race. But then we had 3 other sets of timers. We had one set of timers right here, we had another set of timers right here, and we had a third set of timers right here. Now all 3 of those sets of timers were set so that this line, when the horse crossed this line right here, 6 feet out in front of that barrel before he got to the barrel, that's where he broke this timer. Okay? Now these were lasers, and we would put the laser on this end, we would put the laser on that end, and on this one it really didn't matter, but anyhow, so each of these was lasers, and if you'll remember, a laser makes a red dot, okay? And so 6 feet as he gets to this barrel, he breaks this timer. 6 feet before he gets to this barrel, he breaks this timer. Now, if we go back to the first barrel again, he breaks this timer right here as he comes into it, and then when he goes around the barrel, he breaks the timer again as he leaves the barrel. Horse runs across, 6 feet in front of this barrel, he breaks the timer, comes around, breaks it again as he exits the turn, and comes out, goes to the third barrel, breaks it here as he goes in, around the barrel, breaks it here as he goes out. Okay, so in doing this, then on the computer, we were able to get a time for what we called the first segment, the run-in. We were able to get a time around the first barrel. We were able to get a time from the first barrel to the second barrel. We were able to get a time around the second barrel. We were able to get a time to the third barrel. And then we had a time around the third barrel, and then we had another time going out. So you see, we had a whole bunch of different times and things that we could look at. Now, having these things, these times, allowed us to look very, very, very diligently and very, very closely at what is exactly happening. Now, as we get into some of the later sessions, I'm going to talk about sometimes just looking at the times and the readouts can be very deceptive, because sometimes they're not really telling you what you really did. But for this session, talking about speed, as I was doing the slow motion video replay, okay, here I am. You see this red camera up here? That's me. Okay, and I'm looking back this way, And so as I'm filming and watching these horses come into this first barrel, when they cross this timer right here going into it, here's the laser dot, I could actually see that red laser dot on that horse's body. So I could tell the exact instant or exact spot that that horse broke the timer. Okay, he went around the barrel, and as he got to this other side, again, I could see that laser dot exactly as he broke it as he was leaving. And as he would go to the second barrel, when he would get out here 6 feet in front of the barrel, I could see the laser dot exact spot where he broke that timer going into the second barrel. When he went around the second barrel, I could see the exact spot where he broke it as he left the barrel. Okay, now I couldn't see the laser on the third barrel. And of course, I couldn't see the laser on the main timing line. But as I'm watching these or doing these slow motion videos and I'm seeing these things, I'm thinking, you know, there's something that I ought to be able to figure out, something that would be a very important thing for me to learn as I'm watching these horses and watching where they break those timers. So then I thought, well, you know what? What if, here's my computer readout, I have a time exactly how long it took that horse to go from this spot to that spot. What if on a slow motion video I counted how many strides that that horse took as he ran across the arena, and when I got the number of strides, then if I divided the number of strides into his time divided by the number of strides, that would tell me exactly how long each stride took. Oh, that's cool. And so I thought, man, this is going to be something I can really, really use, because I'm thinking, as I'm first starting this, I'm thinking that every horse is going to be different. Guess what? I found out every horse wasn't different. I found out that every horse, every stride took, I mean, it would vary just a tiny amount, but basically every stride as he ran across was taking him 2.5 tenths of a second. And then I got to thinking about back in the old days, the thoroughbred horse race people used to time the thoroughbred races in fifths of a second. You know, a fifth is 2 tenths. And the reason they did that was because every fifth or every 2 tenths of a second was a stride. That's how long it took these horses as they were running. Every stride took 2 tenths of a second. And so they could tell if the first place horse finished here and my horse was 5 strides behind the first place horse, well, for 2 tenths of a second for every stride, that means my horse finished about a whole second behind the first place horse. I hope the light bulbs are starting to go off in your mind now. They ought to be. You ought to be thinking, Murray, you're giving me some real valuable information right here that I ought to be able to use. And so that's kind of the part of why we're doing this series on the science of speed, the science of barrel racing, because we're going to get more and more into these things. Now, the other thing that I was able to see was the strides around the barrel. I had my time. I could count the strides around the barrel. And so as I counted the strides around the barrel and divided the strides into the time, guess what I came out with? Turn strides were taking an average of 4.5 tenths. Now, when I'm analyzing in the video room, I just use turn strides as a 1/2 second for easy math. So now I've come up with 2 really important numbers. How long a turn stride takes, how long a straightaway stride takes. Wow. 2 tenths of a second running in the straightaway, 1/2 second in the turns. Now the light bulbs really ought to be going off here, because then as you look, you ought to be able to think, well, you know what, as my horse runs the barrels, then maybe the time is dependent on how many strides my horse takes. Remember in the example when I was talking about stride length of 10 feet was 10 strides, 11-foot stride was 9 strides. Okay, now in the barrel race, every stride basically is going to be 2.5 tenths or a half a second, depending on whether it's a turn or a straightaway. So that number doesn't vary as far as how long each stride takes. What also doesn't vary is the distance between the barrels. That stays pretty constant. What does vary is the stride length, or how many strides. Now, I teach this in the clinics all the time, and it's kind of a basic question, and a lot of times people will say, well, that's dumb, but what is the shortest distance between 2 points? Well, we've been taught ever since we was little bitty kids that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Agreed? Now, let's take it one step a little bit further. What is the fastest distance between 2 points? Remember, we're talking about each stride is the same amount of time, so therefore we also could say the fastest distance between 2 points is a straight line from one point to the next. Okay, so I'm setting the groundwork here for some things that we're going to be going into as we get further and further into this thing. We're going to start talking in not the next couple of sessions, but we're going to get into the perfect pattern. Now, back in 2004, I did a teaching that we had on our old barrel racing series we called Barrel Racing the Lynn McKenzie Way, and one of the sessions in that was called the perfect pattern. Now, prior to the time that I did that teaching on the perfect pattern, I had never seen anybody do a teaching on the perfect pattern. Now, if you do a Google search now or a YouTube search or whatever, you'll find that there's quite a few people who have done what they call the perfect pattern. I haven't watched any of them. I don't really want to watch any of them, because I know in the 40 years that we've been doing this, but in the last 15 years since I've been teaching the perfect pattern, I know that the pattern that we run is the fastest way to run the barrels. And so we're going to be talking about that. So as we talked about the science of speed, we talked about stride length and how we determine stride length. We talked about the less strides is the faster time. So now let's go back to that old thing that we've heard and we've said, okay, how do I make my horse get a faster time? Is it whip and spur? Is it bite, kick, chew, whatever I have to do, beat, whatever I have to do to get my horse to run faster? Remember, every stride is the same length of time. So what is faster? Faster is less strides. Less strides. Let that sink in. If you don't get anything else from this video today, you need to get this point. Faster in the barrel race, going faster is my horse took less strides. Now, does that mean that I should skim the rim around all barrels? Not necessarily. We'll be talking about that in later sessions as we talk about the shape of the turn and the size of the turn. But the main thing is less strides is faster time. So, okay, so I don't want to run this on too long and bore you with a lot of stuff. So we're going to end this session for today. I got a couple of more sessions kind of in the works. One that I recorded of Lynn, and it's a session on stepping out, and she was doing that kind of on the ground. And then after that one, we went to the arena, and Jennifer was on horseback, and we kind of covered kind of the same thing from Jennifer's point of view on horseback. And so we've got this one and a couple more coming out, and we're just going to keep going. And so I hope you're learning something. That's the whole point in doing this, is we really want you to learn. We really want you to be able to figure out when I go to the arena, what's going to happen. When I go to the arena, how can I make myself better? How can I get faster? You know, I did a series, or I did a blog, back in, I think it was around 2013, I did a blog article that says, do you have a 3D horse, or are you running a 3D pattern? Let that sink in. We'll talk about that later. Okay, if you enjoyed this, be sure and give us a like. And, you know, if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, hit that subscribe button so that you'll be aware of when we have more of these sessions coming up, because these are just going to get better and better and better. And if you want to be notified, hit that bell down there so that you'll be notified when we post new videos. And so really hope you have a great day, great rest of the weekend, and we'll see you on the next video.